Welcome to episode 48 of the Game Changers. I'm your host, Carla, and I have an exceptional guest with me, Ronnie Evans. Before I dive into tonight's episode, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to Evan, Iggy, JC, and the TSA team for their invaluable support in providing me with this platform to engage with the distinguished individuals in our community. Join me as I explore the lives and stories of my guests, uncovering their personal insights, experiences in fantasy football, and much, much more. The Game Changers is not your ordinary podcast. It has fostered and cherished community, and I am honored to share this journey with all of you this evening tonight. Ronnie Evans is a trailblazer in the fantasy football community, known for his innovative integration of artificial intelligence and his passionate advocacy for mental health. With over 20 years of experience in fantasy football, Ronnie has recently made significant strides in the industry through his work with Good Guy AI. He has developed cutting edge data tools that empower fantasy football enthusiasts to make starter decisions. As the host of the YouTube show, The Judgment Seesaw, Ronnie interviews fantasy football content creators and analysts, shedding light on their mental health journeys and promoting a supportive community. And I was honored to be his guest one day on that show. His dedication to mental health advocacy had made a profound impact, encouraged open conversations, and provided valuable resources. Ronnie is also a familiar face at major events like the annual Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, where he engages with fans and fellow analysts, and where we've met for the first time this year. His contributions to the field, including educational content, and community engagement, have solidified his reputation as a tough leader and innovator. Join us as we dive into the world of fantasy football with Ronnie Evans, exploring the intersection of AI, sports, and mental health, and more interesting subject for tonight. Ronnie, how are you?
I'm good. That was the most overzealous and hype laden introduction I've ever gotten. So thank you. I want to caution everyone and know that I'm only like a fifth as interesting as what Carla just made me sound at all.
You're so interesting. You're so interesting, and everyone loves you. Look at these comments. Everyone is coming to say hi, and I'm wearing green tonight just for mental health. You know, guys,
Love
that
it.
mental
Love it.
health is the color green. And I have my friend Abby coming tonight. We're doing a mental health as well event coming soon for Zumba, because we lost one of our friends too, for for mental health is really important. And we're gonna go through the episode about, we're gonna talk a lot about mental health. So talking about artificial intelligence. Oh, what happened? Ronnie left. So I do believe he have a little bit of what happened? Now you see me, now you don't.
All right.
Don't do that with me. So we're gonna start talking a little bit, about about AI. So the origin and inspiration. What inspired you to integrate AI into fantasy football? Was there a particular moment or experience that sparked the idea for you, Ronnie?
Um, it kind of goes back. I mean, I've really only been like obsessed with AI for the last 27, 28 months. Before that, I just was really mostly a guy that was like a user of lots of different tech things, always found it interesting, was always trying to get like the latest gadget. And I think for me, AI married like the stuff that I think I'm okay at. I wouldn't necessarily say good, but the stuff I know I'm not bad at, with an industry that I love and like a what I consider to be a big family that I'm now thankful to at least be like a cousin in. And it basically when I looked at it right at the beginning of 2023, end of 2022, what I noticed was what everyone has now figured out is that you can kind of do anything if you set your mind to it with this stuff. The idea of like being a creative person and coming up with new things, like all of a sudden that door opened. And for anyone that had curiosities and wants to go learn and develop and grow their skills and become better at things that they didn't have the time or the resources to pay for an education with, or to like go pay for tools to go learn, all of a sudden all of that knowledge was available to us, and it was available in like a conversational system that would work with you as you worked with it. And that to me just, I don't know, I think myself and a lot of other people when they first played with the AI stuff and really took it seriously, kind of you go from kind of curious to like, oh shit, excuse my language, but like this is the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And then you have to kind of like walk back and figure out how to apply it on a personal level to yourself and how you can integrate it into your community and help other people. And that is sort of the direction that Good Guy AI spawned from. Um, Initially, though, I wanted to build a fantasy football advisor and AI chatbot and be the first person to do that a couple years ago. Just decided not to, and I've shifted everything to like celebrating people that are building cool products like that. I want to shout out like Connor Ludlow, who runs Hey Annie, who's a very, very hot AI system for dental work right now, but he also runs a company called SportsMind, and he's working with me on a few things. Good friends with the guys over at
Yes.
Rotobot, and their acceleration over the last couple months has been really, really cool to see. Ben Dominguez, just I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it yet, but they are rolling out right now as we speak a really, really remarkable AI betting app that does everything you could possibly need in terms of like helping gauge bets and so on and so forth. And there's probably a dozen other startups that I've become friends with just simply because I think I had curiosity about AI and I was open and willing to talk about it at a time when at least last year, people really weren't. And even now, it's still kind of this amalgamous blob of really cool stuff that no one really fully understands, and people are, for the most part, a little skeptical of. And so, I don't know. I'm rambling right now. I love AI. I love tech. I love creating. I love startups. I love business strategy. And these LLMs and this generative AI that has come about in the last 2 years has really just opened these doors that just didn't used to be. And the analogy I keep using with people is like every industry and every sector has a moat traditionally
Yes.
around it between the experts and the people that run the industry and that make the money, and then like the user base. And what AI is doing, it is just building bridges left and right over that moat. Like if you're a stock trader who's a super, super sharp stock investor that's been selling stock advice to people for a long time, you should go learn AI because it's doing that better than a lot of people and it will be better than you eventually. And it's just like, it's making it where the average human being can go do what elite human beings have been doing. And that
Mhm.
has never really been available before. And so it's really cool. I really, really love it. And I think the last thing I would say on that subject is that you asked about like what brought me into like merging
Yes.
AI with fantasy football. It was less. I had this initial vision where I was like, oh, like fantasy industry, it's all about advice and it's about analyzing data. This stuff is really good at that. We should be building stuff with AI for our audience, and shifted into a more of a cautious kind of, no, I wouldn't call it alarmist, but um, like a little worried about like our industry as I read more and more about what the highest level people in the field of AI over the last 20 years have said. they kind of list out like a handful of industries every time, and it's usually like accounting and legal and like finance and things like that, and then they throw out stats and projections, and that's our industry. And so I think that there's an element of um I would just like necessity for, and I think done a good job of maybe portraying that over the last 2 years, but our industry is eventually going to be in the crosshairs of these AI systems. And so it's important for all of us to learn it in the meantime and be prepared for that.
I have a question for you. Talking about AI and fantasy football, so there's a lot of people that come to go online, and instead of picking their own teams, they use AI. Do
Hmm.
you believe that by using the AI, is they are cheating?
No, it's all right. Here, this is it's a great question, because I think it taps into this misconception people have about what AI is doing right now.
Yeah.
If you're using a tool and it's telling you about bets and which props to go put your money on, it is literally doing the same thing that you used to go to like a website for, and somebody would look at a spreadsheet and look at what the numbers told them and then relay that information to you. It's just doing the same thing. And I would argue that it's probably not any better than what you have been paying attention to, unless it's one of these super specialized AI apps. AI is not as good. Like, you can't just show up to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I want to go dominate Vegas this week. Give me the answers. Like, it doesn't, it won't work. It's bad, actually, at that, like one shot prompting and so on and so forth. And so what you just described, I don't think it's cheating at all. It's literally the same thing that people have been doing, just in a different format.
So Greg wanted me to ask you a question. Ask Ronnie, what is an LLM?
So an LLM is a large language model, and large language models are kind of this newer. They're like the new. They're like the frontier product that brought AI to the general public. And the cool thing about them is you feel like you're talking to something, but they're just a system that recognizes a sequence and helps predict what the next thing in that sequence is. Language models do it with words, math models do it with numbers, so on and so forth. But large language model is simply a vessel for like a form of AI. There's lots of different types.
Nice. In what way do you think AI is changing the landscape of fantasy football? And are there any trends or shifts you've noticed since introducing these tools?
Yeah, it's starting to happen. This is the first season where it's starting to like actually there's actual products that are AI focused that are out there, but AI has been around in the industry for like a decade. I mean, fantasy pros, like my playbook, that it's been the most useful tool in my opinion in fantasy sports for the better part of the last 7 years. Man, it's literally an AI tool. It's just like algorithms and probabilities baked behind a user interface, and it's kind of guessing and suggesting what you should do. Um, so yeah, it's changing the landscape, I think, a little bit, but it's not really like nothing's shifted just yet. I think there's going to be a point in time in the next 2 to 3 years where an iteration of the generalized AI products like the LLMs, like Greg was asking about, let's say Google Gemini, maybe Google Gemini 4 is so good that you snap your fingers and you do get like 98% accuracy on high level concepts. When that happens, I think it changes the game, not just for our industry, but everyone.
I
But we're
agree.
not there yet. And it might be 8 years from now. It might be 2. It might be 15. Who knows? But for now, it's just accelerating people's efficiencies. I don't think on the surface it's changed anything, but behind the scenes, I could not list all of the companies I'm aware of that have used AI to help accelerate their efficiencies and deal with bottlenecks and help move processes forward that used to be stagnant and so on and so forth. And so, um, if you look at a company right now and they're doing like 7 or 8 times the amount of output that they used to, good for them. That means that they've figured out how to tap into this stuff properly.
I notice you also advocate for mental health awareness, Ronnie, and we've been together into a. You've made a show, and I was your host, your guest, not your. You're my host
Yeah.
today, and I was your guest. How do you balance this with your work in AI and fantasy football, and how do you see these areas intersecting?
Well, I mean, the truth is that the direct tie to our industry is tough for me to talk about, because the overlap with fantasy football and mental health right now is actually something that people don't want to focus on, and that's the dangers of gambling and like the onslaught of gambling that's happened in our country over the last 5 years. And it's not a political statement at all. It's literally just like it got legalized and now it is everywhere. And so that for me, like there's a big mental health discussion that needs to be somewhere in the
Yes.
background of anyone who is doing DFS content. I would throw a statistic out there. I might butcher it, but I'm pretty sure it's like 1.7%, something like that, of adult males who gamble for the first time end up becoming gambling addicts and lose everything. So if you
Yeah.
have an audience and you give gambling advice and you have 10,000 people watching your show, there's a good chance that there's a lot of them that should not be partaking in what you're recommending. And I think that for me means a lot. I forgive the industry. I don't think anyone's doing anything wrong, but at some point over the next decade, I hope to see awareness and like gambling health and awareness on that front become a forefront conversation paired with everything else. But there's a lot of money to be made in getting people to gamble, so it might not happen. But that's the easy, like the direct link. The core of it for me personally, I've been through a lot mental health wise. I've talked about my story on a couple different shows, and this industry, especially in my late 20s, when I really realized I needed to step back and figure my own crap out, if you will. This industry acted almost as like a safety net for me and like a family that I could rely on outside of my own. And so it holds for me selfishly and like personally, there's just a direct overlap between like mental health and all of the friends I've made and the people that support that cause in this industry. There's hundreds and hundreds of content creators every year that get on board for the mental health bandwagon. And so I think that's really the core there. And then the merge with AI, like the reason I did that show on the Good Guy AI YouTube channel was just because yeah, AI is a lot. It's a
I
lot, and it's
agree.
coming and it's reshaping industries and it's changing career paths. And
I
for
agree.
all of the good that AI will do, it's going to cause mental health issues for a lot of people as their lives
Yeah.
shift unexpectedly. So I think it's very important if you're going to be out and be an evangelist for AI to also be an evangelist for mental health because they go hand in hand, whether or not people realize that.
Even as teachers, like we're starting to use AI as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So it's not gonna be like 100%. And I keep my eyes open on my students because I don't want them to go through AI a lot because I want them to be that intellectual and answer the questions I am asking more. But I do see AI being a positive, like I see it positive in the future. But like I'm waiting to see what's gonna happen more. So before we dive into mental health, Ronnie, Greg is asking a question about AI.
yeah.
And he is saying, can AI be intuitive in gauging matchups? For
Yeah.
instance, should I start St. Brown due to injuries in the TB defense field?
Can I share my screen real quick?
Please, yes.
Cool. Let's do entire screen. Yeah, Greg. So this
And
is
then we will
one.
go with Scott. With Scott is asking a question now too. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to answer a ton of AI questions if people have
definitely,
them.
yes,
Um, oh, I've got one. Let's dive into that in just a second, Scott.
yes.
All right. So Carla, throw my screen share up real quick. All right. Whoa. All right. Can you see this, Sports Mind? Carla, can you see this on the screen? I can't.
Can see it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for Greg's question, like this, Sports Mind's been around for I think 19 months now. It's maybe a little bit less than that, but it's my friend Connor. I think this was like the first fully functional AI kind of fantasy assistant, and it's been out there for about a year, and it's great. He just actually is rolling out right now updates to like V2 of the entire system. A lot of the back end is changing. It works really, really well. But for example, I have, let me see, what was Greg's example?
So he was talking about. I can pull it up again. And maybe JC can put the question for us, but I can find it. So he is saying, for instance, should I start St. Brown due to injuries? Yeah, he put it in.
Or St. Brown, or was there another person?
No, just St. Brown. Can you see it down? JC just put it in.
Yeah, it's just going to make this whole thing look. For instance, due to end of the Tampa. All right, should I start? Well, so it's going to give you to that, like that question, Greg. We should all know this. You got to give like other options to the fantasy analyst. Even if you asked me that as a human, I'd be like, well, who else you got? Like if you have
Yeah.
Sky Moore, I would put in Amon-Ra St. Brown. So if let's just say, let's use an example, Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers got a lot of work, but I think most everyone would put St. Brown in. So this week, due to St. Brown's, whoops, oh my goodness,
So I would say
injury.
we need to be more specific when you ask AI some
Well, I
questions.
mean, it's not even the AI. Like if you're asking a fantasy analyst a question, give them all the context. But like, let's use Zay Flowers as the example. You can go into Sports Mind, and it'll spit out an answer for you here in a sec. So the answer to that would be yes. You can use AI to do that. You can also go on to, if you really wanted to like play with it yourself and do a cheaper version of this or something that's less powerful, you could go on to ChatGPT, create a custom GPT, give it a bunch of instructions and parameters, go look up a couple fantasy analyst guides on how to manage trades or something else, and just load those documents into it and be like, hey, just use all this as your reference, and I'm going to ask you questions. Here's a database, and I want you to be my fantasy football advisor. I wouldn't rely on it because it's going to make some mistakes, but you at least can get a feel for how the stuff works just on your own. I don't know why. I'm gonna text Connor and tell him we're doing a show right now, and his thing isn't answering the question.
So
uh,
for me, I would say that it's more, you need to rely more on human being than AI, because this is gonna lead into more not correct answers at the end.
yeah,
Right, right. It makes sense, right?
yes. On Raw St. Brown, just as an example. Let's see if this one works. He did. He and I, Connor and I, talked like 3 hours ago, and he said he was rolling out some updates to the back
Oh,
end.
look at that. Now we have an answer.
So there you go. You could also do this with Rotobot, but he's projected to be a top tier wide receiver. Blah 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 blah. This is not answering specifically for the game, but if you gave it another prompt and said, "Hey,
Ronnie, can we ask AI if they have any like secrets about you or something like that?
about me," oh yeah, actually, so if you have for everyone that's using or watching right now, if you have a Chat GPT Pro
This
subscription,
will be good for Mel.
if you have a Chat GPT Pro subscription, you can go in and ask it about yourself. I did this last week. I was just curious, and it gave me like a full bio. Like I could have just taken it and pasted it on a website for about me. And it was doing that based on all of the conversations I've had with it over the last 2 years. It had just like learned me. But yeah, I think actually when I was doing the Judgment Seesaw, when I was doing research, I would go in and load like you up, Carla. I typed you in and searched you with ChatGPT, put you into Google, linked in a couple articles on different things, and then had it spit out like a short bio so I could start working on questions. So you can definitely use it to just like 2x, 3x, 5x the like output you have in research, and thus save yourself a lot of time. What is happening in the chat right now? And I want to
I
answer
can't tell
Scott's
you.
question.
So Scott was asking if you have a favorite mental health charity. So he's
Yeah.
not putting you on the spot right now. You can think about
Yes.
it and tell him later if you want.
No, I do. It's called Active Minds. They are near and dear to my heart. Active Minds is a organization that empowers and educates youth, and the whole point of what they have
Nice.
going on goes back to like the founder. It was a lady, she lost her brother to suicide, and her immediate reaction after grieving was like, this is really frustrating. This was like totally totally, absolutely preventable. So, how can I go make sure that other people don't go through this? Did a bunch of research and figured out, hey, if you want to stop this from happening, you have to talk to kids and youth and young adults. Age 14 to 24 is like the sweet spot. If a kid has something going on, if you can address it during that time, it's often not a lifetime problem. And so they started setting up chapters at colleges where students were leading everything, student run, student envisioned, and mental health chapters that focused on wellness and education and so on and so forth. I think there's 2,000 of them now across the US. They're the number one presence on college campuses in the country for mental health, in Canada now too, I think. But also they do high schools now, and they've
Yeah.
started to look into middle school a little bit. But the school I work at is actually the place that did the flagship high school charity for mental health. And I can't talk about it too much because I'll get emotional. But my dad runs the school I work for, and I think the story goes that he had noticed everything I had been going through and decided that he wanted to have that be like a focal point of where we work and for all those kids. So active minds is the answer.
So mental health hit every single home, and as teachers as well, we go through it a lot. And thank you for sharing that. And we're gonna talk a lot about it right now. So talking about the judgment seesaw,
Yeah.
was there a particular moment or experience that motivated you to focus on mental health with the fantasy football community? And what inspired you to start that?
Well, it was really a cause and results sort of thing for me. Like I mentioned earlier, I started a dynasty podcast like 8 years ago, and being the strategist at the time, I wanted to do something in fantasy. I noticed that there was literally one other dynasty podcast at the time that was consistent on Apple, and I was like, I'll go attack that. And it did okay. And then I mismanaged a couple things. I don't want to dive into all of that. There's a little bit of drama on the back end. I wasn't my best self, just to put it that way. And it
We
fell
learn.
apart. Yeah, it fell apart. And as it fell apart, that was when I was like, this shouldn't have fallen apart. It was good. The numbers were great. I loved what I was doing, but something is off with me, and I really got to deal with that. And so the fantasy industry kind of like in its own way, I dove in. People embraced me and were really nice, as they do. If you're a good person, you'll get embraced by this industry. And then I had to pull back, and the industry stayed there. And like Scott Fish, I would actually give him a shout out as like a good example of that. Like over the years, just like a little DM here and there, I'd hit Scott up and be like, hey, thought here, thought there. And just having people like him that are at the forefront of this industry available and like willing to, even though I wasn't doing content and I wasn't really like partaking in any of the actual rigmarole of what makes this industry tick. I was just being involved in the community. And I had not just Scott, but so many people that were just like,
Yeah.
they were just around and supportive. And so I think like 5 years ago, it just was like, I couldn't look at the fantasy football industry and not also for myself tie mental health into it. And then, like I said earlier, the gambling thing happened
I
and
just
it
want to
went
stop
legal.
you one
Yeah.
second, Ron. Scott just donated
Love that.
$1,000 to Active Minds.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Scott. That's
Scott,
fantastic.
seriously, that's awesome. Yeah, it is. Thank you so much, Scott. Just I didn't want to cut you off, but when I saw that, I just had goosebumps. Like
Carla, it's
this
your
is
show. You can cut me
this is
off whenever you
all
want to.
about now. This is what the community is all about, and I really respect everyone in this community. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
we will.
I
We
mean,
love
all right.
everybody.
So
Yeah.
perfect example of that. Like
Yes.
there's, Scott is the leader of charity, I would say,
Yes.
in the sports and
Yes.
gambling industry at large. And that's amazing. Thank you, Scott. And not to dwell on like the donation or the dollar amount, but that isn't an
Yes.
abnormal gesture. Like my understanding, and I've witnessed it on other shows, is people hop in like Scott. They find something that they care about and they go and support the people that are
I
on the
see.
show. So I don't know.
Yeah.
This industry is pretty special.
It is. I agree. It's really special, and they make you feel comfortable, and you speak your true self. That's a really amazing. So yeah, talking about the judgment seesaw. You know, your show impacted a lot of people, and I was one of them. So, what are some common themes or challenges that guests have shared about their mental health experiences? And how do these conversations help in breaking the stigma about mental health?
All right. I'll answer the second part first.
Yeah.
It's just like with any sort of cause that is uncomfortable, that is inexplicable. Just being aware and talking about it is massive. And so, awareness in having these conversations, the judgment seesaw, the podathon that happens, like everything, they all play a pretty significant role in supporting and helping grow awareness around different causes. And so, like, I think that is how they helped. You know, you could sit here, we could just sit around and make fart noises and talk about mental health in between, and it still would be good. I'd be like, thumbs up. You know, that's help raising. It's not the way I would do it, but that's raising awareness, so it works. Um, but in terms of topics, I mean, Carla, we talked about everything. It blew my mind, the diversity of topics. I mean, we went from we talked about like tough stuff like domestic abuse and like civil war and
Yeah.
like deaths and just like trauma from war and PTSD and like physical impairment, and then also like bipolar disorder and neurodiversity and just depression and anxiety and imposter syndrome and yada yada yada. um I think the most common one, so if just relating it back to the industry, since this is a show that's focused on our industry, there was a remarkable trend and concurrent, like people just kept bringing up imposter syndrome and like a feeling of not like being worth what they're setting out to do. And that, like, whether it was Nick Whalen, the first person I had on the show, one of the biggest names in the industry, too, like you and me, and like smaller people in the field, like we, like it
Yeah.
just kind of like flowed through the entire series. Was this sense of like, am I really the right person to do what I'm doing? Am I doing the right thing today? Is, you know, the goal that I set a goal that will actually help other people or help me, and so on and so forth. And my takeaway was like, you know, that's pretty normal then. If everyone is feeling that, then you know what? We should talk about it more and make sure we are aware, because it seems like a bit of an epidemic and it makes sense. This is an industry where you have to get on shows, talk on a mic, and put yourself out there. So you're going to, yeah, yeah. Like, and so it's the imposter syndrome side of it was probably the most common thing, for sure. And then second to that, I would say just dealing with like online toxicity. A lot of
Yeah.
different approaches actually to that. Everyone seemed to have their own way that they navigated, but you know, the internet can be a pretty tough place. And
I
so
agree.
those were really the two super common themes. And then the most common of them all, though, usurping all of it, was love and care and support for everyone in the industry, and especially for anyone that's going through something that like feels alone. It was like, nah, like you're not.
Yeah, you're not. Talking about the internet, like I'm that person that's really like I'm I'm not into the internet a lot. So if I have an issue, I don't post it everywhere. So if there's something that happened to me, I just go away. I just leave. I just take my like it's like taking my bag and just go with it. So talking about the internet and talking about this stuff, if something like an issue happened, would you share your stuff online, Ronnie? Would you just bash that person or like talk about that person, especially that we are speaking about mental health, and especially that I'm seeing a lot of it going around lately? How would Ronnie like deal with that issue?
Well, that's a tricky question for me to answer, because I think that I like one of my faults is that I can be not a different person. I don't have like alternating personalities, but my the safety rails that I put up between myself and the parts of myself that I don't like and I've worked really hard on for the last decade, they're not always there. Sometimes I'm feeling weak, and I consider the moments where I like would go out of my way to focus online on something negative. I had one in the last 2 months, and I've
Yeah.
hated that the moment ever since it happened. Not the incident itself, but the fact that I felt necessary to get online and talk about it. I hate that shit. Excuse my language, but
Yeah.
it's got to be like, for me, it's got to be a really, really good reason to bring it up. Otherwise, it's never good to deal with online toxicity online in public. Like, do it privately through a DM, work through your stuff like an adult. And I can't sit here and tell you that I've done that every time. I try to, but I've certainly slipped here and there. And so I don't know, but different strokes for different folks. Are some of the people I love the most in this industry that I consider my closest friends, like have a habit of like pointing out when people are toxic online and making a showcase of it. And so, like, I don't know.
I know. I agree with you 100%. So, what are your future plans for the Judgment Seesaw? I want to
Oh,
know.
I
Do
love
you
that question. It's so good. All right, so
Yes.
I've been wrestling with this for 2 months because I'm bringing it back during the season, and I initially was like, well, maybe we'll do it week 1, maybe we'll do it week 2, but I'm waiting until week 4. And in week 4, I'm going to start it back up. But like, if Scott's still watching, as an example, we get Scott and a couple of the other guys from Fantasy Cares on, and we, instead of doing the Judgment Seesaw one-on-one shows, it's going to be group therapy where we get on and we are able to then take not
Nice.
only mental health discussion, but we'll tie in what's happening in the fantasy sports landscape into it. So, like, as an example, if we did an episode this week, I would, and maybe I got the Fantasy Alarm crew on, we'd sit there and we'd spend 15 minutes
He says yes.
talking about the talking about the tight ends in week 1 and how we all are having quote unquote mental health issues or depression about the tight ends failing, and then layering it also into like real world stuff and things we're working on and so forth. So that's the future of it in season. And then in the off season, every May, I'll do the same thing, a sprint. Next year, I'm thinking about doing 2 a day instead of 1 a day. And trying to just
Awesome.
I would like to get to a point where eventually I'm doing 100 episodes in the month of May. And so we'll get there in a couple of years.
That's amazing. I love hearing that because that show is really awesome. And, there's a stigma about mental health, especially
Yeah.
about, like guys talking about mental health. And for you to take that into your hands and talk about it, it's something big, especially in the, fantasy football community. So I'm 100% with you in that.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to someone in the fantasy football community who might be struggling with their mental health? Are there any resources or strategies you recommend?
Yeah. Number one, I know this is cliche and it probably seems shallow, but go watch the Judgment Seesaw. And like, if you work in this industry and you're going
It's
through
not
something,
cliche. Yeah.
just pick out an episode and expose yourself to the idea that you're not like alone, and that there's other people that are like going through similar things. And that would be the first step, because you have to, if I step back for a second, in the world of mental health, to get yourself out of the rut, the number one, there's like foundational pieces that you have to build. There's 4 of them, and the first one is not doing it alone. You have to get somebody else in your corner that can hear you out, can let you vent, can help you work through things. So the whole point of a mental health crisis or issue or moment is that you can't deal with it. So you
Mhm.
have to go get somebody else to help you work through it. Secondly, you have to figure out what parts of your life are contributing to whatever you're going through. So let's say that you're like, you don't have energy at work, and you're not doing great with your content, and it's like dragging you down to write articles every week. Okay, so don't look at that. First, look at your personal life and look at like your habits. Are you sleeping enough? I know this stuff sounds cliche, but it I would say that like the cliche stuff is cliche with mental health because it actually works. So figure out are you eating right? Are you sleeping correctly? Or are you getting enough sleep? Are you like actually giving yourself a proper headspace when you're doing that sort of work? So figure out these. number one, get somebody in your corner to help you. Number two, figure out what's going on in your life around the issue that is feeding it and get those things out of your life. And then number three would be to like appreciate yourself and focus on the progress you are making as you go through it. I think that is I don't know, it's like the slippery slope that, I mean, maybe it's not true for everyone, but for me, I still work through stuff all the time. And whenever I slip and feel like, I've got to like catch up on some mental health work, or I've been depressed for the last 2 weeks and I can't figure out why, I know why at this point. And I think that I always notice that I'm not giving myself credit in those times for how much progress I've made. And when you do that and you actualize forward movement, it takes power away from whatever thing you're dealing with mentally. And so get somebody in your corner, figure out what's going on in your life that is contributing to your mental health issue, and then go in and forgive yourself, recognize the work you're doing on it. And the last piece can be a variety of them, but it has to be some sort of action, and taking action towards whether it's like, okay, I'm having problem with depression. So every day I'm going to go outside for 15 minutes a day and sit on the grass and ground and listen. And I'm going to go to a therapist each week. There you go. There's your action piece. And then just do it. And that's it. So find somebody, don't do it alone. Focus on the rest of your life, not just that negative thing, and figure out what's feeding it. Take action and forgive yourself, and be aware of the hard work you're doing and making. And the last thing I would say is that if you are someone who is going through something, you can also like DM me. I'm happy to like just sit there and talk to you. And I know this, you might laugh, but part of the reason I fell in love with AI is because it is the best therapist that I've ever had. And you can get on there if you are having a tough time and pull up like Anthropic's Claude Sonnet, which is free, and talk to it. And like, holy shit, it's incredible. I'll give you just a one side story and I'll stop talking.
No, please.
Of like AI helping with the mental health thing. I was at a camp this summer. There was a kid in the camp who we believe was neurodivergent. And his parents may or may not have disclosed that to us so they could get him off their hands.
Yes.
He was having a tough time. He was sitting in one of our classes in the back of the room, like with his hands over his ears, crying while we were talking about superheroes. Yeah. And I pulled him out, and he could not like gather himself. He was stuck on this track, and he was in hysterics about the fact that none of the kids in the classrooms liked Transformers or thought Transformers were cool. And I tried everything I could do. I did everything to try to calm that, every kid trick in the book. Nothing worked. And finally, out of frustration, it was like, hey, man, look, I've been trying to help you and I really want to, but you keep yelling at me and I don't want to get yelled at anymore. Would you like to talk to my friend? He's a robot. He's kind of like a transformer. And I gave him my phone. I turned on Pi AI, and I kid you not, Carla, like 3 minutes later, he was good. And he wasn't just good for the rest of the day. He was set for like 4 days, had no issues.
Oh my
and
God.
It was like, and I went back and read through the conversation, and it was like having a professional child psychologist, like in a very, very articulate and caring way, help a kid work through something that I could not figure out. So AI is a really, really powerful tool to help out working through things, not just like for work and product development, but
it's not AI, Ronnie. It's you. You help that kid. You help that kid. It's not AI. Thank you for doing that. It's because of your education, because of what you went through that helped that kid. That's amazing. It's you, Ronnie. And I agree with JC. It's you. It's not AI. You had the education to help him. And anyone that needs help as well, you can DM me too. So I'm here for you too, guys. And we text each other, we talk to each other, Ronnie and I sometimes as well. And he sent me some videos sometimes, and you make my day. So I love that.
I've sent you a couple of videos from the kids, haven't I? Where the kids are like, oh, yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
Yes,
love that. I love that. Trust me. Like, you brighten my day, Ronnie, every single time. I love it. So tell me about the Fantasy Football Expo. What motivates you to attend
Oh,
an event like that? And how, do these events contribute to your work and passion into fantasy football?
well,
Yes.
I think that there's like three different types of people that attend the expo. There are established people in the industry that are there to support the industry and see their friends.
Yes.
Um, then there's people that are trying to make it in the industry. And the expo is just like the best for that crew. If you're trying to
Mhm.
make it and you want to get face to face time and actually get to know people and like prove yourself in a powerful way, like in person and not just like be a cool guy online, that's why I go, or at least why I had gone the first time. But then the final piece is like people who just love fantasy or love the fantasy community. And so for me, I kind of belong in those latter two quadrants. And the first year I went, I actually wanted to go 3 years ago and I couldn't because my best friend got married the same weekend and I'll never let him live that down. Uh, but he's also a poker friend that I play with or used to play with regularly. And so he knows that I won the tournament at the Expo this year. But anyway, I go to the expo to connect with people, to talk with them and like learn about what they're passionate about and what they're working on and what they're building, and then also at times tell them about what I'm working on, or at least like be able to make a connection and become familiar in a two-way street sort of way with someone
Yes.
on a personal level. And those relationships are in what end up like propelling careers forward or propelling like visions forward and so forth. And so that's why I go to it partly. The other
I
part
agree.
of it is what I talked about earlier. And I said, like, for me, the fantasy industry really is like a second family. And so, like, how could I not go to like the annual get together? It just like it's for me, it's a requirement, and I will be there every year that I can. Um, but I think I don't know. I hope I explained that all okay. I was talking in circles a little bit, but I go for the connections, the love. It's also really nice to get to like see people whose articles you've gotten advice from before and see them in person and realize that they're like just a big goober like you, and like
Yes.
it's nice. It's humanizing. It takes the kind of the mystique of the industry away and kind
I
of lets you
agree.
fact that we're all people.
Connecting with people face to face is totally different. I mean, you can always hide behind, your phone. You can always hide behind your computer. But when you connect with someone, this is where you know them at their best. Either you connection 100%. Either you connect or you don't. So going to that, to the expo, what can you share some memorable experience or highlights from, the expo this year? What
Yeah, yeah.
something something
Uh
memorable for you?
Let's see. I mean, I saw a bunch of people that had seen last year, and what's nice about going your second time is you get to like it's like a family reunion. You're like, like
Yes.
just like running up and hugging people. Um, and so that was really cool. There was a moment. I mean, Eric Froton doing karaoke is always one of my favorite things. The guy is incredible. I had a couple really, really funny interactions with Froton. I would like to that guy just shouting him out. He's amazing, especially
Last
for
year
being
you went
that.
on the table. He was standing on the
This year
table.
he lost his voice. Like he couldn't talk, and he still went up there and did karaoke like 3 times. And he sounded abysmal. And he was just out there like crushing it, and I think that's the point, is to go out there and just let loose.
Yeah,
So the karaoke time is really fun. I mean, winning poker this year was not expected, but I mean,
it's
maybe
crazy.
expected, but like that was pretty fun. Pretty fun that was I missed out on the street side and parking lot
I
wake
saw
ball.
the video.
Oh, bro! I like next year I have to take part in that and like just make a fool of myself swinging the bat once or twice.
They called the police on them, Ronnie.
Well, as they should. I mean, Scott's a wild animal out there. You got to keep some cops around just in general. Uh, the so there's stuff like that that's fun, and then there's also like nah, I froze for a second. Sorry.
Me too.
Okay. There is like the Saturday night party where you get to go out
Yes.
and see everyone, and there's all these different like little booths going on. That's that's the Sunday thing. But on Saturday night they have like the cornhole tournament. I love that because you get to just walk around and talk to people, and like, and every fifth person you talk to, you realize that this person has like 80,000 followers, and I've been watching them on TV, and so it's just I don't know, it's cool. It's a really really fun experience.
They're so down to earth, in my opinion. Like you go, you see them, and this friendship that you build with people is just amazing.
You
Like
and
I
me.
go, I just have this hug with like Bob, or like I talk with someone. It's like you feel like family,
Yes. Yes.
seriously, like family, which
Yeah.
is really amazing. And the connection that you build through the years with this community, it's non-replaceable, in my opinion. So it's like this event, if you never went to the fantasy football expo, you should go. Like, this is my third year, I'm going, I'm planning for it for my fourth next year. You should all go. So how about your like engaging with fans and other participants at these events after you go? Do you have like fans and
No.
like any of that? Like, okay, here I am. This is Ronnie Evans. Come here.
No.
I can sign your paper if you want to, or
No.
something like that. Or no, not yet.
No. Thankfully, I didn't, because I would have had to look at those people and been like, there's like focus your attention elsewhere. I have not done enough for this. But I did. I was pretty surprised. Like last year, a lot of people were meeting me for the first time. This year, it felt like every person I talked to did know who I was, and that was like for someone like me that has been trying to find themselves and work through a lot over the last 5 years. That was normally I'd be like, cool, check your ego at the door, man. Who cares how many people know who you are? But it was very validating for me on a personal level that like
Yes.
made me feel like I'd actually done the work I needed to, and like was able to, like I alluded to earlier, like pat myself on the back and congratulate myself for progress.
Oh,
But my role with like fans at the expo, I did more of it last year than I did this year. But I don't know, I get a kick out of introducing people to other people. Scott actually is a good example. Last year, 3 or 4 times, there were some people that were attending the expo that I met that just said they were fans, and I was like, oh my god, I have to introduce you. I was like, oh, this is Scott Fish, and I
every
grabbed
day.
Scott and was like, hey, I got to introduce you to these two people. They're fans. Can you just give them like 2 minutes? And Scott was like, sure. And I just went around and did that as like this little networking mascot for some of the new people. And I hope to be able to do more of that next year. But I don't know.
Nice.
I do kind of jump into this weird kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but like I kind of play as much of a role as I can of like a social like a social like kick in the butt for everyone that's attending the expo, whether it's before or during, and just in general, trying to get everyone revved up and connected.
I believe everyone loves you, Ronnie. So everyone loves you. And Greg loves doing that too. So before the episode finish and ends up, I want to talk Transformers because I know you love Transformers. So let's talk a little bit Transformers. So I know that, like um, the original, it was 1984, the animated series. Okay, so I did my research. I watched Transformers, but I did my research especially for you tonight. So it's a classic, and then there's a series included the Transformers Prime and Transformers Cyberverse. So what tell me a little bit about what like dragged you into Transformers. What did what do you like about it more? And who's the best character in it? For me, it's Bumblebee. Who's the best character for you?
Give me
Bumblebee.
30 seconds to respond. I'm gonna do a little bit here, and then I have something to tell you about
No, I
Transformers.
can give you 10 seconds.
Okay, fine. I'm going as fast as I can.
I do believe, Greg, there's one in the movies right now. Greg is asking if there's a new Transformers coming out. I do believe they just they put one out right now in the movies, if I'm not mistaken. Is there, Ronnie?
All right.
A
I
new
just want to
movie
throw
coming
it
out?
out. No, I just want to throw it out
No.
there that I I don't know where you got this information, Carla. I don't care about Transformers at all.
You said
No.
Transformers. We're gonna talk
I
Transformers
I brought
and
up Transformers because like a child
yes,
liked them, not because I like them.
you
But
said you retweeted something and you said we're gonna talk Transformers and we're gonna talk
oh,
this.
I did. Oh, this is
Yes,
my
you
fault.
did.
I was just joking because they're like a tech thing. I do love tech though. And here I got Scott. Can you hop in and answer here? All right, Carla. This is what I've got for you though. You'll love this. I got Burt Reynolds on the.
Scott, tell him you cannot tell Carla something and then get out of it. I'm gonna ask
All right,
you.
Carla. I have a surprise. I've brought Burt Reynolds back from the dead, and this
No.
is he's answering your question for me. Okay.
Okay.
To Transformers is the blend of high stakes action and the deeper themes that lie underneath the explosions and giant robots. At first glance, it's about a battle between Autobots and Decepticons, but if you dig deeper, it's really about identity, loyalty, and the struggle for survival in a chaotic universe. The fact that these machines are more than meets the eye, they're beings with emotions, ambitions, and flaws, gives the whole narrative a more profound layer.
There's more, but that's all we need.
Thank you so much, Scott. Oh my God, I love it. I love you, Ronnie.
Carla is the best.
Oh, I
I
love you.
can't believe I tricked you into thinking I was like a massive Transformers nerd.
You retweeted something and you said, we're going to talk Transformers. I'm like, yes, he said Transformers. I'm going to
Uh,
put Transformers.
we can talk Batman though. I am like a diehard
You
Batman
said
nerd.
sport balls too.
Oh, sport
So
ball.
we're talking sports.
Yeah,
Are we talking that or no?
we can talk sports ball. What do you want to talk
Okay.
about? Which one?
Yeah.
Badminton?
So
Field
let's
hockey?
see. What are some of the latest trends in fantasy football that players should be aware in this for this season?
The latest trends. Well, I think a current trend right now that people should be aware of is that everyone shut up, Scott. If you bring me a Scott
Yes.
Fishbowl Transformers shirt next year, I will wear it every day.
Yes, please. Yes.
The,
And put
the
Carla asked him a transformer question and he didn't answer.
I got Burt Reynolds to answer. He's not even alive. All right, I want brownie points for that. The number one trend that I would say people should be aware of right now, at least, is that people overreacted a lot to what happened in week one. And week one in the NFL right now, week 1, 2, and like halfway through week 3, that's our actual preseason for the starters. These guys are not playing any football really in the offseason anymore. And that's not just preseason games, but like snaps. And so, as a great example, like 90% of the or 70% of the elite quote unquote tier of tight ends didn't do a freaking thing. It's not going to be the case the whole season. It's week 1. Nothing matters right now. Maybe pay a little attention to a few things, but that's the number one trend that I would point out is that people are getting way, way too focused on what happened in week 1 right now.
I know people are gonna hate me for that because I'm a KC fan. Okay. But
Hey, good piece.
what do you think about us winning with a toe? We won the game because of a toe.
Yeah, I'm happy to see the Chiefs win whenever. They're like my de facto. People hate both of us, I guess, because I root for the Chiefs.
And do you think that they're gonna win the third time in a row this year?
I don't think that there's any. I didn't see anything from anyone on Sunday that was like, "Oh, this team looks like they are going to be better than the Chiefs at the end of the year."
They look really strong. In my opinion, I'm rooting for them. They are my team at the end, but I feel that they are strong this year too.
Yeah.
So I'm like rooting for them. I want to take your advice a little bit about people who are starting into fantasy football. So,
Sure.
What advice can you give to someone looking to get started into fantasy football or even in AI development, Ronnie?
Do you mean as a content creator or just like getting started and playing?
just getting started. I mean, some people maybe are looking into just getting started, getting their foot into fantasy football. They don't know anything about it.
Mm,
Like and they want to maybe like reach out to you or reach out to JC or maybe Scott into trying and learning how to
sure.
get into the game per
Yeah.
se, and they don't know how to get started into fantasy football. What can you tell them about that?
Step number one, you got to get an internet connection. Once you get that, you're halfway there. So like you gotta, I actually, the first thing I would tell somebody if they're thinking about getting into fantasy football, if I'm not their personal friend, I would say go figure out who the number one fantasy football fan is in your friend group and see if you can tag along and like maybe co-manage a team with them or talk to them about a draft and have them help you. Because I don't know, fantasy football is such a overtly complex and overanalyzed things these days, but a lot of times I think people want to get into it and they Google a couple articles and there's just so much verbiage and like language that they don't understand. And I don't know, I think the best way to get in is to simplify it and find a friend that can help you get into it and have them teach you what they think, and then over time absorb the world of content creation and all of the stuff us crazy people talk about. But and then for AI, absolutely, it's very simple. Go
Yeah.
create an account with any of the ones. You can create a free Google account. You can have a free Chat GPT account. You can have a free Claude account. You can go on Meta and get Llama if you want to get real crazy and put it on your computer for free and run it there. And then spend 20 minutes a day with it. Doesn't matter if you're just every day you're asking it to add numbers for you. Eventually, you're going to want to do more. But the only way to get started with AI is to start using it. Nothing else really matters. And then once you start using it, you can start figuring out more things and how to apply it the right way.
So I want to ask this last question. If you could start a rumor about yourself, what would it be, Ronnie?
Oh, a rumor about myself.
Yes.
That I'm Matthew Barry's nephew.
You heard it here, guys. He is Matthew Berry's nephew. So you go, the Game Changers hashtag at Ronnie Evans, Matthew Berry nephew.
No, what have I done?
Sniper Mal, you gotta hashtag that tonight. You're gonna start this hashtag rumor about Ronnie Evans on the Game Changers. That's a good one. I love it. I love it. Ronnie, I really don't wanna like end the episode. I love you so much, and I know everyone do love you. They want to keep talking about AI, mental health, and even though that you don't want to talk about Transformers, they want to keep talking about it. Before I conclude, Ronnie, could you please let our audience know how they can connect with you and where they can find you?
Yeah. So right here, wait, right beneath me, right there, right where I'm looking, right there. Those are my handles. So go use those right there. And then yeah, you find me on Twitter. I have other social accounts and I don't use them. So I've had people actually ask me like, why haven't you added me back on Instagram? It's because I don't. You and everyone else is waiting for me to add you because I'm not going to use that. Good Guy AI, Ronnie A. Evans, and then finally, well, perfect. This parlays into it. I wanted to say two final things, just shares for everyone. First of all,
Please.
we talked earlier about like online etiquette. I, in the Judgment Seesaw, spent so much time about like being positive online, and I got back from the expo, and I don't want to use health as an excuse, but I got COVID immediately, was sick for 6 days, got better, had to go into teaching, and then got food poisoning and was sick for 4 more days. And it just like threw me off. And I've noticed I try to keep an eye on how I present myself online. I think the way that I've acted on Twitter in the last 4 weeks is very similar to how I was acting like 7 or 8 years ago. And it's a person that I tried to get away from. It's been a very much like goofy, not serious, and then also a little catty and a little bit negative. So if you were a recipient of any of that from me in the last 4 weeks, just know it's not personal. I actually hate that I have not been a fully positive person online, and I'm getting back in battle and getting my stuff back together. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then also in the spirit of positivity, like Scott, if you're still here, thank you for donating to Active Minds. For everyone else that is watching, you don't need to go donate to them right now like Scott did. Next year, when I do the Judgment Seesaw, I am going to do a fundraiser paired with it. I regret not doing that this year. And when I do that, a big portion of it's going to go to Active Minds, and some of it's going to go to Fantasy Cares. And so that'll be a part of it then. And it's not because Scott just donated. That's been part of my plan since I did the Judgment Seesaw in May. But Active Minds is dope.
Great
Mental
collab.
health matters. And if you got kids, talk to them about mental health and make them aware so that they know that they can get help if they ever need to.
Thank you. And Scott wants to work together on that, which is really awesome, Ronnie. So
Absolutely.
connect. That's really amazing. Mental health is really important. And like I said, I was wearing green tonight for mental health. And thank you so much for sharing your story and like lighting the like putting it out there. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in for this episode of the Game Changers. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Ronnie Evans and gained valuable insights into his word and the word of fantasy football. Thank you, Ronnie, again for sharing your experiences, life lessons, and wisdom with us. We really appreciate you. Join us for the next episode of the Game Changers on Wednesday, September 18, when I welcome Larry Schechter as my special guest. Joining me as my co-host for the evening, the incredible Craig Kellogg. I cannot wait for that. I also want to express my gratitude to Evan, Iggy, JC, and the whole TSA crew for their continued support and for providing me with this exceptional platform, sharing my guests' authentic stories and experiences. A special acknowledgement go to JC for his invaluable contributions behind the scene. Your efforts are deeply appreciated, JC. Thank you.
Yeah,
Don't
JC's the
forget,
man.
he is. He is really. Yes, I'm in his book. Oh, Scott, so you have to come next week. Scott is saying that he is in his book. That's amazing. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to host him next week. So don't forget to subscribe, you guys, to the podcast. Leave a review. Your feedback help us improve and reach more viewers like you. Follow us on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and join our community, the sports affiliation, where everyone is welcome. Until next time, keep challenging the game and making your mark. This is Carla signing off. Have a great evening.